Okay, that is a base for performing what? Stream operations today. So anyhow, we want to know about a class called as optional class. This is another class that we got in Java 8. Optional class is given in what? Java 8. Java 8 has provided what one class that is called what? Optional class. Now we want to understand about who is this optional class and how we can able to work with the optional class. So those things we are going to discuss now. Okay, let's start with. Okay, let's go ahead, guys. So now, so to understand who is optional class, first we have to know about why this, I can call what, why this optional class is provided. See, mostly the exception what we get in applications is null pointer exception. Okay, I'll tell you a good example of how we are getting the null pointer exception. So then we'll understand how we can avoid null checks and how can we make our code in a better way and more understandable way with the help of optional class. And the optional class will be useful for us when we are discussing with the Java 8 streams also. Okay, right. So the class name is java.util.optional. Cool. Okay. So let's see first of all how we can able to understand about optional class, because I want to explain first what is the reason why optional class is provided. Then you'll understand about how we can avoid the null pointer exception with the help of optional class. The most commonly used, the most commonly occurred exception in a program is what? Null pointer exception. So basically, generally what happens is we just make a call a method. That method will return a value. Again, on that value, we call another method that will return some other value. Like that, we are generally writing code. Generally, most of the times when you call the methods in real time, they return values. Okay. That value can be something like a, mostly it could be a string type of value, or it could be some object. Okay. When you're working with the real time, methods, mostly the methods doesn't return primitive values. Okay. We have methods which returns primitive values, but most of the methods returns objects. So first I'm calling method one, which returns an object. I'm calling a method on object returned by the first method. Then the second method returns me another object. Then I will invoke another method on that object. Like this, we generally make a call to methods. We will understand the same thing with an example. So basically why optional class is given is to, okay, mostly to avoid null pointer exceptions and also mostly to avoid null checks. Okay, actually to avoid null pointer exceptions, we need to do null checks. If more null checks are there in a program, it kills readability. It kills the readability of the application. How? I'm going to tell you with an example. Okay, let's see. First of all, what's the point I want to write for you? Right. The most common exception that we'll get in application. Who is that? The most common exception. The most common exception that we'll get in application.
Null pointer exception.
Yeah. The most common exception that we will get in application. That will get in application is a null pointer exception. is a null pointer exception. Okay, the most common exception that we'll get in an application is a null pointer exception. Correct. What is the reason? If a method returns null, and if you call another method on the returned value, because of its returning null, we are getting null pointer exception. What's the point now? Mostly, I'll show you with an example. Just in 1 second, in 1 minute, you'll understand everything. So mostly, when a method is called, it returns an object. And on that object, we invoke or we call the other method. Okay. If the first method returns, returns a null. Then the second method call throws null pointer exception. For example, to understand this statement, I'll write. So to avoid null pointer exception, what we can do is, to avoid null pointer exception, we have to do null checks in application. How do we do null checks in application? That also I'm going to tell you. So to avoid null pointer exception, guys, we have to do null checks in application. So how can we do null checks in application? I will tell you. See here, just for example, to understand it, assume that I have a code like this. The code is, let's say, string. Okay, string, some result equals to, I'm calling some object dot obj dot, there is a method called get value. These are all some of the assumptions you need to understand so that you can understand the concept. Okay, then after this, what I'm writing is string final result is equal to result dot to uppercase. Assume that first I'm calling a method called get value. Okay, now first I'm calling a method called what? Get value. First I'm invoking this method, guys. Get value is a method I'm invoking now. Correct? So basically what I'm saying now, first I'm invoking a method called as what? Get value method I'm writing. This method returns me a string. That's why I'm storing the result in a string variable. Then I want to call on that result another method called as to uppercase. Then I'll get my final result. And this final result is what I'm going to use in my further code. Or I want to display this final result. Okay. See, first I'm calling a method called as get value. What this get value returns me here? It returns me what? String. Get value method returns me what? String. Correct. Now what, guys? Guys, this is going to return me string. What I'm saying here? For example, if this get value returns a string called Ashok IT. Now the result contains a value called as Ashok IT. Suppose if it returns a string Ashok IT. Now tell me what is stored in result variable? Ashok IT. Now result dot to uppercase. Then Ashok IT is converted to uppercase. The final result will contain uppercase Ashok IT. Got it right? So this is very good. Now the other scenario. Let's say for example what? Get value method has returned a null. Okay. Now in this case, tell me what result is containing here? Null. Because this get value method has written me what? Null value, right? For example, I'm calling one method called as get value, which returns me actually one string. I'm expecting a string, but I got null. Then tell me here, result dot to uppercase. What's the value of result now? What is the value of result here, guys? It is null. Correct? Huh? It is null. Null dot to uppercase. Can you call any, if you call any method and a null value, then what exception will be thrown? Null pointer exception will be thrown. Okay, now guys, which exception we are getting now? Null pointer exception we are getting. Which exception thrown here, guys? Null pointer exception is thrown. Did you understood my point? Did everyone got my point? Yes? Okay, try to understand the point, what I'm saying now. Guys?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say. Another example we will see. This is simple example. I mean, just to tell you about how we are going to get the null point exception. That's what I'm trying to say. My intent is, I just want to say that how null point exception that we are getting out. So how to avoid the null point exception in my code? Suppose if at all I want to avoid null point exception. Say for instance, I want to avoid null point exception. Correct? So if I want to avoid null point exception, then what should I do? If I want to avoid null point exception, I have to write my code in this way. Which way? I have to write if, look at this. First, I have to write string result is equal to obj dot get value. Correct? Now what? Now what? If what? Result. If result not equals to null, okay. If a result not equals to null, then string final result is equal to result dot to uppercase. Tell me, can I have a null point exception now? Can I have a null point exception with this code? Observe the second piece of the code and try to tell me whether are we going to get any null point exception here, guys? We are not going to get any null point exception because we are already we are doing some null check here. If a result not equals to null, okay, it's a null check here. We want to check whether result value is not equal to null or not. If not equal to null, then only we want to call which method? To uppercase method, so that we are going to get the result into what? Uppercase. Okay, na? This is how we can able to write the code, so that we can avoid what exception here, guys? Null pointer exception. Is there any chance of getting null pointer exception now? As per our discussion in this code, in the second part of the code, did you get? Are you going to get any null pointer exception in this piece of code? Anywhere?
No.
No. Okay. So how can I avoid null point exception? I have to check with a null value. This is called null checks. Either equal to null or not equal to null, whatever you just, when you compare something with a null, it is called null check. Whether you are checking with null for equality or inequality, doesn't matter. But this is called as what check? Null check. This is called null check. This is called null check. Okay. Good. Now, yeah, this is called null check. Did you get my point? Cool. So, I just want to copy this for you so that in the document, if this is there, it will be very easy for you, like whenever you are reading these statements. Okay, that's why I just want to copy this. That's why I want to copy this, guys. What I wanted to do now, I want to copy this into the document. Okay, now I got this one. So far, am I clear with you now? Did you got the point? Now, so in the second case, In the first case, if get value method returns null, if result is null, then when you call result dot to uppercase, because result is containing a null value, then what exception we are going to get is null point exception. So to avoid the null point exception, we need to apply this kind of null check so that we can avoid null point exception. We can apply if condition, correct? Now let's see, I have another requirement like this. For example, I have a statement like this. For example, I have a statement like this. Let me show you. For example, in my application, I have a statement like this. String result is equal to student dot get address dot get state dot okay, student dot get address dot get state dot get city. This is my statement, okay? Understand something. Actually, there is a student object. In student object, there is a method called as get address, which returns me address object. Address is also one more class. Okay. Address is also one more class. Assume that. Get address returns address object. On that address object, I'm calling get state method so that it's going to return me a state object. And on that state object, when I'm calling get city, it is going to return me finally the name of the city as a string. Okay, so is my statement clear for you? Did you understand my statement? Student dot get address dot get state dot what? Get city. Did you understand this statement? Get address method returns what? Address object. Assume that this get address. Assume that get address returns a address object.
Sir,
on that address object, I'm calling get state, which returns me state object. And on that get state on that state object, I'm calling get city, which returns me string city name. I want to store it in the result variable. Okay, so basically what get address returns? For example, if I say get address, this get address returns address object. On this address object, I'm calling get state. This returns state object. On that, I'm calling get city, which returns a string. Assume that get address returns address object, get state returns a state object. On that means address as a state object, state has a city, and student has a address object. You know, has a relationship and all. So student dot get address dot get state dot get city. This is a statement I have. One statement is there. Okay, right. So tell me, is there any chance of getting null point exception in this code? Can you identify and tell me?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is the chance of getting null point exception here?
If address is null or state is also null, means either a state null or a city null.
Okay. Very good. Basically, thing is what?
Yeah.
Basically, thing is what? See, guys, when you are calling get address method, what it returns me? Suppose I'm calling a method called what? Get address. What get address method returns? Get address is a method which returns what? Address object. Correct? Get address is a method with address object. What if, for example, get address method returns null? Suppose if this address is null, then tell me on this null, if you call get state, you'll get what exception?
Null point
Null point exception.
Even
For
students
example,
also can be null.
okay, we got address object, but when I'm calling get state, for example, it returns me null.
Yes.
Okay, right? Then tell me what we will get next. When you call get city method on this null, what we will get? Null point exception.
Null pointer.
Okay, right? Null point exception. So there is a chance of getting null point exception at multiple points here.
Yes.
So we should not write a code like this. This is not the good way of writing the code. Then what to do? Apply the null checks. Apply the null checks. Let me tell you how to apply the null checks now. Okay, let me remove all these things. This is just for your explanation. This is all for explanation. Now what? Okay, just I want to delete all these things. Now, there is a chance of getting null point exception here. So how can I avoid null point exception? So first I should write like this. What I should write? First of all, what if student itself is null? If, for example, student is null, if the student variable has null value, on this null, if you call get address method, then also you'll get null point exception. Na?
Yes.
So I should write my code like this. For the code, if student not equals to null, then start. Address equals to student dot get address. Correct. Next what? If address not equals to null. If address not equals to null. Correct. If address not equals to null, then call state equals to address dot get state. Okay. Next again.
If state not equals to null.
If a state not equals to null. If a state not equals to null, then I want to call string result is equal to state dot get city. Then finally, I want to display that city name. System dot out dot println of city. Print the result. I'm just closing the inner if. One more inner if. Lastly, outer if. Did you understand this program? This code, I mean program. This is the code.
Yes, sir, understood.
This is called null checks. Like this, you guys need to write the null checks. Like this, you guys need to write what? Null checks. When you are working, you should write null checks in this way. If I write only 2, 3 if conditions, it's okay. I mean, code can be understandable or it is not killing the readability. But if, for example, I have a statement like this, where I'm calling almost 8 or 9 methods like this. Get state dot, get substate dot, like that I'm calling. Get city dot, again get name, something like that. If I'm calling this for example, at least 7 or 8 times, this chain is going on for 8 or 9 methods. Then tell me, to avoid a null point exception, I should write my code like this with null checks now. Automatically what happens now, more conditions I need to implement. By defining more null checks, the code of this application gets, the readability of this application code gets killed. So what's the point to say what? If there are more null checks, what we will get? The code readability, we are losing it. If you write only some null checks, it's okay. But if you start writing more null checks in application like this for every conditions or for every method calls, then what happens? It kills readability because of more null checks. The code becomes complex. It's not easy to understand for other developer, right? It kills readability of the code. That's where optional class came into picture. That's why in Java 8, Java has provided us one class called as optional class. That's a correct way of understanding what is optional class. Why it is given first. Why it is given. Okay, right. That is only for your explanation. But here I won't tell you now. What's the point I wanted? If we add more null checks in a code, it increases complexity, code complexity, and reduces code readability. So, to avoid null checks, Java has provided optional class. You are going to understand how optional class will help us. This is from Java 8. What is optional object? And you can find the definition over here. It is a container object which may or may not contain a non-null value. Means it doesn't contain null value. It may or may not contain a non-null value. It is a container object which may or may not contain a non-null value. I'll tell you what is the meaning of it. If the value is present, you can call the method called as is present. It returns true. Then you call the get method will return the value. Okay, correct. Of course, in the same example, I will just explain. But first of all, how optional class object is created? There are different ways are there for creating optional class object. There is okay. There is a method called as empty. This is going to create a empty optional class object, optional instance. And there is a method called as OF. Of nullable. So the three ways of creating optional object is of method, of nullable method for a given value. Returns an optional with a specified present non-null value. Of nullable, an optional describing the specified value if non-null. Otherwise returns empty. So I'm just going to talk about how optional class object can be created. Three options are there. For the three ways, one is creating empty object. Second one is object for a given value. The next one is a object for a given value, but there is a difference between of and of nullable. Okay, right? So let me check. Let me give, an example to understand how it could be. See, for example, look at the previous code. Let us assume that, just assumption. Let us assume that I'm deleting this code because you people understood this, how we can able to write the null checks and how it is going to kill the readability, right? I want to remove this. Assume that, assumption, just assumption. getCity method returns optional object. Optional of a string OPT. This is only I'm talking about assumption. Okay, assumption that I'm getting one optional object. What's the meaning of this now? This optional object may contain value. It's a container object. It may contain or may not contain a non-null value. If present, then I want to display. If there is a value, I want display. If there is no value, if there is no value, which means what? If anyone is returning null, this optional object becomes empty. Means basically what? You are not going to get any null pointer exception. This may contain the value or may not contain the value. It may or may not contain a non-null value. How to check whether value is there in this or not? There is a method called as is present. If opt dot is present, if it is true, then get the value and display. String result is equal to opt dot get, then display it. System dot out dot println. See the previous code, this code is having a lot of difference. You know of writing more null checks. Just I'm calling a method called as is present. Okay. What this method checks? Checks for a value in this object. It's a container object now. It checks whether is there any value is there in this container object. If a value is present, then how can I get that values? By calling the get method. This is how you can able to use optional class object. Okay, two methods I've explained. Generally, what happens? Optional object is returned from a method. We don't create optional object manually. Okay, but of course, it's better to know how to create optional object. But what I'm trying to say is, no, mostly we will get optional object as a return type from a method. For example, when you are working with the stream API next, whenever we are calling some stream operations or methods, then they return optional object. And what we need to check is a value present or not. If value is present, then get the value, display it or use it. If a value is not there, leave it. Display some other output. But you don't need to write null checks. You need to verify null checks. And there is no chance of getting the null point exception. That is why Java 8 has given a class called as optional class. Let's see with the first example. For the first example, let's say I'm removing this code. But very first example, what I told object.get value. This is copied in the document also, right? Look at the document. Obj.get value method is there, which returns me a string, right? Right? For example, look at this. I will write my code like this. Code is understand in sequential order. Then you will understand what is optional class. I'm writing like this. Optional of a string opt equal to optional dot options the class dot of nullable of obj dot get value. Okay, try to understand now. This is the correct way of learning optional class. I told just now. If at all you want to create optional object in your code, suppose you want to create optional object. Suppose we are calling a method, maybe that method can return optional object. That's one case. In that case, we are not creating because the method is returning the optional object for us. Okay. But in this code, I am creating optional object. How can I create optional class object? Optional dot, there is a method called as of nullable, which is static method. Okay, of value. Okay, see here. I'm calling here obj.get value. Just in our previous discussion, what we discussed, this get value method returns a string. Or maybe it's going to return me. I mean, don't expect that where is get value. This is, I told you, a sample code. Please understand, that's it. Assumption is required. Let us say. Let us assume that what, guys, get value method is there. What this method returns what? A string. Assume that. Now you tell me, I am creating optional dot of nullable is for creating one optional object for this value. I mean, option is a container object which can store this value. Right? The question is, if get value method returns null, then what this of nullable will do at the time of creating or constructing optional object, if the value is, the given value is null, it will create an empty optional object. And for example, if get value method doesn't return null value, if it returns some string value, then optional object is created with that value. So how can I check whether there is a value in optional object or is it empty? I can write if condition, just one if condition now. If OPT dot is present, if the value is present, then get the value. By calling the get method, you can retrieve the value from this optional object, then you can display. This is how you need to understand. Okay, so how can I create optional class object manually? Most of the times what happens, we don't create optional object manually. The method which we are calling, that returns me optional object. So I know it of creating it. But sometimes if required, we also need to create now. So how do you create optional class object? By calling a method called as off nullable. Okay, right? Off nullable. Did you get my point? Off nullable. What off nullable method will do? It creates an optional object with the specified value. If the value is null, then this method off nullable creates empty optional object. And how to check whether this optional object contains value or not? There is a value present in the optional object or not? By calling a method called as is present. Okay, so basically what optional is a container object. This is container object. This is optional object. It's a container object. This is object name is OPT. What this OPT contains, for example, now the value is Ashok IT. Assume that. This is OPT which contains a value Ashok IT. For example, if get value method returns null, not Ashok IT. If this method returns null, then empty object is created. Empty OPT. Okay, when this object is created, can you tell me when this object is created? If get value method returns a non-null value. For example, if get value method returns null here, then tell me to the off nullable, the specified value is null here. If it is null, then what off nullable will create? This empty object. So basically what happens, either this or that, one of them is created. I'm giving a separator in the middle. Either this or that, one is created. Okay, done. So how can I check whether value is present or is it empty? There is a method called is present. Is present returns what? True. If value exists or if value is present. Then how to get the value? By calling the method called as get. So when I call get method, I'll get the value called Ashok IT from this option object. I'm storing in a result variable. I'm just displaying it. So this is how you can able to create optional class object by calling a method called as off nullable. Okay, now there is a method called off OF. Difference is if I call off and if the specified value is null, it won't create empty object. It will throw null point exception at that line only. Which means what? Optional object is not created. It creates optional object for the specified value if the value is not null. If the value is null, then throws null point exception. That's what off method. There's another way of creating it. Optional. Let's say of string OPT is equal to optional dot off OF. Off, for example, obj dot get value. I'm sorry. Okay, now. Now question is now, what if, for example, this get value method returns null? The specified value of half method is null. Then this method will throw immediately here what exception only? Null pointer exception. You are going to get null pointer. Half method throws, it won't create optional object. Simply it is going to throw exception. Which exception? Null pointer exception. Null pointer exception. It will throw null pointer exception. Okay. That's what the difference between off and off nullable. It won't create empty object. Sorry. It won't create any empty object. Returns what? Throws what? Null pointer exception. If the specified value is non-null, then creates optional object. Then again, how to check whether value is present or not? Call isPresent method. Then call get method to retrieve the value. This is called the way of understanding what? Optional object. So this is the one way of creating optional object. This is another way of creating the optional object. The other way of creating optional object is empty optional object, just empty, without any value. If you want to create one empty object, OPT is equal to optional.empty. I have covered all the three ways in this. Okay. So what are the three ways of creating optional object? With off nullable, with off, and with empty. Okay, three statements. All these are static methods. We can directly call them with the class name. The class name is what? Optional class. Off nullable. What's the difference between off nullable and off? What is the difference between off nullable and off, guys? Can you tell me answer?
Off nullable gives the options. If, either null pointer exception, if null pointer object means null object or object. Off is given only a object, which is not a null.
Off nullable is not throwing any exception, but off method it throwing null pointer exception.
Yes. While constructing optional object, if the specified value is null, off nullable creates empty optional object. But off method will throw what exception? Null pointer exception. If the specified value is non-null, then both the methods will create what object? Optional object. That's the difference, no? Correct? So off nullable doesn't throw null pointer exception if the specified value is null. But off method will throw null pointer exception if the specified value is null. That's the difference between off nullable and off. But mostly, we don't create optional class object manually in the code. We call a method. That method creates and returns me optional object. Okay. But we don't manually create optional object. That is very rare. But it is better to know how to create optional object and what's the difference between off nullable and off, and how to create one empty optional class, empty object of optional class. The three ways. I want to add the three. I've given an example here, but I just want to add the statements over there. Let's go ahead. Okay, good. Now, I just want to write some points here, like how we can able to create optional class object. Okay.
Sir, what
Let
is
me
the
add the point
difference,
here.
sir?
I want to add a point. Sorry.
Sir, what is the difference, sir? I did not catch it clearly, sir, that of the both of them.
Okay. Please listen to this one more time. I will anyhow, it is going to be repeated, then you will understand definitely. So optional class object can be created. Optional class object can be created. That's better. Optional class object can be created in the following way. One is optional. This is creating empty optional object. Optional of t. OPT is equal to optional.empty. This is nothing without any value. One empty optional creates empty optional object. Creates empty optional object. The second one, optional. Of T, OPT is equal to optional dot of nullable of value. The value can be T I'm writing, means it could be any type. Creates optional object with the specified non-null value. Okay. If the specified value is null, then it creates empty optional object. Third way. Third way is off method is there. Optional of T, OPT is equal to what? Optional dot of TT. So here I have read comments. Okay, I'll move it to the next line, next page. That's better. What's the comment? It creates an optional object for the specified non-null value. If the specified value is null, then throws null pointer exception. Throws null pointer exception. Okay, that's good. So you got to know about how we can able to create the optional class object. Now we know that what optional object is a container object. Optional object is a container object. It may or may not contain, may or may not contain non-null value. Okay, optional object is a container object. It may or may not contain a non-null value. Okay, if a value is not there, empty. If a value is there, how can you get the value? By calling, first check whether value is present or not. If the optional object contains value, means if he is present method returns true, then you can access the value or retrieve the value by calling get method. So one method is he is present, next method is get. Okay. Now I want to talk about 2-3 methods. Later you please go through that because all the methods I can't explain, but I want to explain about a method called as is present and get, because these are most commonly used methods. And one more method is there called if present. Is present is there, if present is there. We'll discuss that one also. And then remaining methods, like there is a method like or else get, or else throw. Like this, or else methods are also there. If present, do this, or else do this, like that. Okay, I will explain. Or else methods you try, but I will explain about is present, get, and if present. See, what I'm saying is, what is optional object? It's a container object. It may or may not contain a non-null value. Okay, so how can we check value is present or not, or is it empty? Okay, then there is a method called as is present. So to check optional object has a value, call is present. Now, if it returns true, then call get to access the value. I
Yeah,
want to just copy the same statement here. Let me write optional of string opt is equal to optional dot of nullable of some obj dot get value. Okay, this is only for understanding. There is a method in my code called get value that returns me a string value. So I want to create that optional object for storing that string value. If that is null, then it is empty optional object. So how to check now? If opt dot is present, if there is a value present in that object, then I want to get the value. How can I get the value? String, for example, result is equal to opt dot get. Then I just want to display the string value. System dot out dot println of string. Okay, that's how we can able to call off nullable. Just to understand about how to work with is present and if get methods. Similarly, sorry. All right. Similarly, there is a method called as if present. What if present method? Without writing any is present, I can also call one more method called as if present. If present, we can just perform whatever the task we want. If present, do this work. Otherwise, don't do this. For that, we need to pass one consumer object as a parameter to the if present. Consumer is a functional interface. You can see there is a method called as if present. If a value is present, invoke the specified consumer with the value. Otherwise, do nothing. So what is the method that you are talking about? We are talking about a method called as if present. What is accepting? If present method accepts what object? Consumer object. We know consumer is a functional interface. Yesterday we discussed is a function interface. If any method is accepting a functional object, we can pass lambda expression as a value. So I want to tell you. If present method, I'm going to write here. What's the point I'm writing? I'm writing the point related to if present. What's the statement? Okay. If present method can be used to do the action if value is present. If present method can be used to perform a given action if a value is present. Otherwise, do nothing. Let me tell you the same example. For example, I have optional object. What's the optional object? Optional of string opt equal to optional dot of nullable of obj dot get value. Okay, I agree with this. This is one optional object I have. I'm writing at opt dot if present. If present means if the value is present, then for example, I want to display that value. Just that string value I want display. I want display the value. Right. If I want display the value, then I can write what? Some value or something. Let's say result arrow token system dot out dot println of result. Do this action. Do this action. Thing is now what I'm passing here, I am passing one lambda expression. Because if present method accepts consumer object as a parameter. if present method accepts consumer object. A consumer object, which is a functional object. As I told you already, if it is a functional object, so we can pass lambda expression. So we can pass lambda expression as a parameter. Okay, na? We can pass lambda expression as a parameter. That's why I'm passing the lambda expression as a parameter. Already told you in the last class also, if for example, any method accepts functional object as a parameter, we can pass lambda expression while calling that method. While calling the method, we can pass a lambda expression as a parameter if it is accepting a functional object. So that is the difference between is present and if present. If present is not to return true or false value. Is present is to return a true or false value. But if present is to perform an action. If a value is present, otherwise do nothing. That's it. If there is a value in optional object, OPT, do this action. If a value is not there, don't do anything, do nothing. That is what if present. Okay. You can also continue. If present, do this, or else do that. Means you can call something like this. You try later. I'm not writing. OPT dot if present. For example, do this. Again, or else do that. So continuation. If present, then do this task. Or else do that task. You are getting my point, right? That's how you can write or else method also. So try with or else. Try with or else. Get is also one more method. If you want to throw exception, some exception you want to throw if value is not present, then you can write or else throw. Or else throw some exception. If present, do this work. If not present, if the value is not present in this optional object, then throw this exception. If you want to do this kind of operation, then call the method called as or else throw. You have a method called as or else throw, or else get. We use with a combination of if present. We are going to use those methods with the combination of if present. So please try to find something on that. Or else. Okay. Now, anyhow, we discussed about optional, but we can't create example on optional. Of course, we can create, but not required, because when you are working with the streams, when you are working the stream operations, many of the stream methods are going to return optional object. And once we receive optional object, we are going to check whether value is present in that object or not by calling is present method. If the value is present, then call the get method and get the value. Otherwise, if you want to directly perform the action, if value is present, then what? Call if present. If present, then do this, or else do nothing. Otherwise, do nothing. Like that, we call mostly is present, if present, and get of optional class. Mostly, we don't create optional object manually. We call a method, and that method returns optional object. Once we got the optional object, then we will perform operation like is present or not, is value is present. If the value is present, then we call get method. And after getting the value, then we will use that value in our logic, in the further logic. That's how we read the code in the real time. Okay. So anyhow,
Sir, one question, sir.
Make it fast pace. Okay. Tell me. Ask me, but yeah.
Yeah. Just if we correlate with the first example, student.get address and that. So if I want to implement with optional, generally we are just returning the address object in the get address, right? So internal implementation, can I do the last statement optional of nullable with that address object and return it so that it will return null optional object?
Optional object, correct.
Okay.
That's what we need to do. Means your get address type is optional of address.
Okay.
Okay. Similarly, get state return type is optional of state.
Okay.
Similarly, get it is option of string. They must return optional object, na? Okay. Get. Now the important concept is to know about Java 8 streams. Anyhow, while working with the streams, you'll get optional object. Don't worry. Now we want to start with the streams now. There are many operations on streams. We'll discuss one by one. First, let us understand who is stream, first of all. We are calling it as a stream API.
Sir, one question.
Which is also called as Java 8 streams. Yeah.
Optional dot half nullable of object dot get value. If object is null means what happens, sir?
Actually, when you are writing that object also, you make it as, if for example, if you are calling obj dot get value, obj is an object you are creating now. See, for
Yes.
example, I have a class called as class A. Class A obj is equal to new class A. Like that you are creating. Then your obj is not null. The first object, whatever you are calling, if that object is not equal to null, then you write in the next line inside the if condition, optional of string opt is equal to optional dot half nullable of obj dot get value. That one null check you need to apply. I told you what optional will try to avoid null checks. I'm not saying that it's completely eliminating null checks, but at least if there are, instead of writing 10 null checks, it will reduce to 1 or 2 null checks.
Okay.
So before you start writing obj dot get value, what is your first condition? If obj not equals to null, then start the curly brace. Inside the curly brace, then you write my statement.
Okay, sir.
Got it, na?
Thank you. Yes, got it.
Yeah, good. Okay. Optional will avoid null checks. Okay. Most of the null checks got avoided. Only 1 or 2 null checks definitely required. But instead of writing so many null checks and making the code very complicated, it will reduce the null checks, and it reduces the number of null checks to just 1 or 2. And so that it also avoids null point exception. That's how optional class works. Now, that comes to stream API. So first of all, stream S capital is an interface. I'll write complete name. Java.util.stream is an interface. In Java, it is an interface now. It's not a class, it's an interface. First, this should be very clear. Now coming to the point. We know collections. We already know about collection. Actually, collection and stream, both we work together in our applications. Collection is mainly for storing the elements. When streams are introduced. Earlier, what happened before Java 8? Collection is for storing the elements and also to perform processing on the elements before Java 8. But from Java 8, collection is mainly for storing the elements. But don't use collections even for processing the elements also. We can do processing, but what happens? The code will be lengthy. We'll get more lines of code. The code is going to become more if you start performing processing on the elements of the collection. With the collections, we can do processing also. Starting a for loop, take one by one element from the collection and check whether, if for example, let's say for example, I want to explain this example so that you people can understand of concept easily. Let me delete all these things. What I'm saying is, for example, I have a list of employees. Now, how can you retrieve one by one employee? Okay, I have a list of employees. I have one list of employees. Assume that I have EMP list. EMP list contains list of employees. Okay. Okay. Now, I am creating one empty list of employee. For example, new list is equal to new array list. I told you to understand this streams, we need collections. My requirement is, first, I have already one big list of employees. EMP list is there with me. This is containing some thousands of employees. EMP list is containing some thousands of employees. EMP list is containing thousands of employees. Okay. My requirement is, I want to identify new joiners of this new joiners from this list. New joiners, I mean, joined in our organization in the last 1 year. Means experience in this organization experience is less than 1 year. They're called new joiners to my company. This list is containing what? Lot of employees. Let's say thousands of employees. Find out the new joiners, add them to new list. Okay, experience in this organization is less than 1 year, nothing but he's a new joiner to my company. I want to add such kind of employees to another list. Can anybody tell me a pseudocode list? How can I do that? For example, this list is containing, okay, this list is containing, let's say, 5,000 employees. Now this EMP list is 5,000 employees are there. What I want to identify? I want to identify the new joiners. New joiners meaning experience in this organization is less than 1 year. They are called as new joiners to my company. I want to just separate them into one more list. I want to add them to a separate list called new list. Can anybody tell me a logic for my requirement? Do you know collections and all already? You guys know about collections and everything. So that's why I'm asking this question. Can you tell me now how I can do that?
We'll iterate each object, we'll
Yes.
take it and we'll compare the join date and
Yes.
we'll add it to the new list.
Yes. So what, for example, I have tried a code like this. This is called processing now. Already this list is containing elements. For storing, I am using list collection. And even for processing also, I have to use the same collection now. For processing on the collections, I should start writing for, this is called for each loop. Employee colon EMP list. You all people know about for each loop, right? If E dot get experience in org less than 1, then new list dot add of E. You have to write a code like this. Am I right? You have to write a code like this, guys. Okay. So tell me, my list has 5,000 employees. This for will iterate for 5,000 times, right? This for will repeat for 5,000 times.
Yes.
Very good. It will take some time. Okay, 5,000 is less time. For example, if the employees are 5 million employees, not 5,000, 5 million. Then tell me this processing will take more time.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Moreover, at least I'm writing 2-3 lines of code here. At least I'm writing 2-3 lines of code here.
Yes.
Yes. So to process the list means to process a collection fastly, to apply processing and a collection fastly by reducing the number of lines of code. With the streams, we can remove these 3 lines and we can complete in 1 line. Okay, just in 1 line, we can complete or we can achieve the same thing in 1 line. 1 line of code is enough. Second, processing is very faster. So streams are given for one purpose in Java 8. Collections are given for other purpose. Collection is for storing the elements. Okay, if you want to process the elements of the collection, then you should write the logic manually by iterating through for loop or iterator, then if conditions. Correct? So how do you process the elements of a collection? With a code, by creating loops or through iterators and if conditions. Okay, the purpose is very important. First, any concept when you're learning, you must know about what is the purpose of that. That is what actually I'm focusing more when I'm giving you explanation in this workshop. In every topic, my intention is what first I want to give you to a student a very clarity that identify the purpose. If the purpose of the concept, if you know, then later, if today you learned 2 methods only, tomorrow you can learn 2 more methods. That's not a big thing. But without knowing the purpose, if you directly learned 2 methods or 4 methods or for example, 100 methods you learned, but you don't know the purpose, like why it is given, then exactly you don't have any clarity on that subject in your mind. So first we'll try to understand that concept. For everything, that's what I gave. For optional class, I gave the same thing. Default and static methods, I gave the same thing. Lambda expressions also, we discussed the same thing. And for streams also, we are doing the same thing. So first understand a collection object. Collection object could be list object, set object, queue object, or we have another type of collection that is called a map object, anything. So collection object is basically to store the elements. Okay. So if you want to do processing, if you want to do some processing on the collection of elements, what to do? If you want to do some processing on the collection of elements. So if you want to do some processing on the collection of elements, then you have to use stream construct. You have to use a loop. Okay, later I'll tell you about stream. Use a loop. You have to use a loop or loop simply. You have to use loops, iterators, if conditions, etc. If the collection has more elements, longer time will be taken for processing. Longer time will be taken for processing. If the collection has more elements, longer time will be taken for processing. Correct? If the collection has more elements, then longer time will be taken for processing. So that's where we got the concept of streams. Right? So Java 8 has provided Stream API to perform processing on the collection of elements, to perform processing on the collection of elements with less code or less lines of code, whatever it is. with less code, otherwise with concise code, anything. Concise means short code with concise code, with less lines of code. That's where Stream API got introduced. So Stream is for performing processing on the collection. Okay. Stream is not for storing the elements. So difference between stream and collection is what? Collection is to store the elements. List, set, map, these are for storing. Stream is not for storing. The intention of stream is to do some processing. But we don't use a stream for storing the elements. At the time of performing an operation, while doing the operation, okay, if suppose I am performing some kind of filtration, out of 5 million employees, now I got 5,000 employees as new joiners. So intermediately we can store in a stream. But actually stream is not for really storing the elements physically. It is just only for processing. During processing, result can be stored in a stream. But final result we have to store again in collection only. Because stream is not intended for storing the elements. Stream is only intended for processing the elements. That's why, okay, that's why the point to understand is don't use a stream for storing the elements. So there may be a question rise. Why? Let me show you. For example, if I go to java.util.stream. Right, okay. Stream is one interface. Let's say the extends one base stream. Base stream is extends auto closable. Okay, auto closable is one interface. That's not a problem. Auto closable. Base stream. So stream is an interface. Similarly, I will open one more thing called as java.util.collection. We want two of them. One is stream and second one is collection. In a collection extends iterable. Okay. Iterable is one interface. Iterable is an interface. Okay, okay, are you getting my point? Iterable is an interface. Collection is also an interface. If you look at somewhere, I'll tell you. It extends iterable. And somewhere I want to show you that. Yeah. Okay. Basically, let's take, for example, a class called as array list. I want to show you something. Here you can find out. That array list class implements what? Serializable. You know, if you want to transfer the objects from one place to other place or one layer to other layer in applications, one module to other module or one layer to other layer, that object must be what type of object only? Serializable. Streams are not serializable. Means what's the drawback of storing the elements in stream? Suppose if I use a stream for storing the elements, then I cannot able to transfer the stream from one layer to other layer or one module to other module. If I store in collection object, I can able to do that because collection is a serializable object. I mean array list object or linked list object or vector object or tree set object or hash set object or linked hash set object, whatever the classes that you know in collections, all those are what type of object? They are serializable objects, which means we can transfer them from one layer to other layer or one module to other module. But what about stream? If I store elements in stream, if I use stream for storing the elements, then I cannot able to transfer them. That's why stream is not intended for storing elements. It is only to process the elements of a collection. Okay. Do you know, did you get this point? This is very important.
Yes,
This is
sir.
very important that everybody has to know. Okay.
Yes,
So I
sir.
just want to write that point now. Okay. Yeah. While performing an operation, the intermediate results can be stored in stream. The intermediate results can be stored in a stream. Then we perform another operation on that stream. Okay. So the purpose of collection, the purpose of stream are different. This is very important point I'm writing. Whatever the next point I'm writing, this is very important. The purpose of a collection and a stream are different. Okay, a collection, what is the use of collection, guys? A collection is to
store the element.
store the elements. And a stream is to
Stream is
process. Okay, a stream is to process the elements of a collection. Is to process the elements of a collection, but not for a stream is to process the elements of a collection, but not for storing the elements. Next point also very important. If elements are stored in a stream, then it can't be transferred. It can't be transferred to another module or another layer. Why? Because it is not
immutable.
It is not a serializable object.
Yes.
Okay, but what about collections? Every collection object, I mean, array list object, linked list object, hash set object, tree set object, queue object, map object. I'm talking about everything. Hash map object, linked hash map object, everything. So every collection object is a serializable object.
Yes, sir.
So it can be transferred to another module or another layer. So these last 2 points will make a lot of difference. Everybody has to know. Now let's see how a stream can be created. So to create a stream, different ways of creating a stream now. First thing, a stream can be created from collection. First I'll write from collection. From collection, I mean, let's say you have an array list object. For example, you have an array list object and you want to create a stream. For example, I'm writing what? Stream of, let's say, for example, employee. It could be employee, customer, that later we'll discuss. But to understand, stream of employee, stream is equal to emp list dot stream. Stream is a method in collection interface. which means what? If a stream method is there in collection, you can create a stream with array list, with a linked list, with vector, with hash set, tree set, linked hash set, queue, priority queue, right? Array blocking queue, priority blocking queue, all these classes. Because collection is a stop interface for list, set, and queue interfaces now, as per the hierarchy of collections. But you can't directly get a stream on map object. Understand clearly. Map doesn't create a stream directly. This point is important. For example, I have a hash map object. Can I call a hash map.stream? No. Can I call list.stream? Yes. Can I call set.stream? Yes. Or can I call queue.stream? Yes. But can I call map.stream? No. Because stream cannot be directly created from map. Map cannot create the stream directly.
Yes,
Because
sir.
map contains key and value pairs. No?
Yes, sir.
So you can do processing on the keys, or you can do processing on the values by converting that map to a set, by calling key set method or entry set method or values method. I give examples, okay? Multiple examples I'm trying to give on streams. Okay, because streams is very important. If any one to other Java 8 features are there that you can learn, I'll give an idea of those things you can learn. But first I want to complete streams completely. Then based on the remaining time, we will decide to go on with the date time API or some other thing. And also I want to expand about something called as method reference operator. In the streams while working, I'm going to tell you about method reference operator, which is nothing but 2 colons. The 2 colons indicates it's a method reference operator. Okay. So anyhow,
Each stream
that's the
has
first
data
option.
type.
Second one. I'm only creating stream here. Okay. Next one. Sorry.
Each stream has data type.
This stream.
Each stream has data type.
No, it is not data type. It is called type parameter. Generic type. This is called type parameter. No? It is called generic type. We don't call it as data type. We call it as a type parameter. Okay. Next. From an array. So how to create a stream from an array? Let me give you. I'll say from an array how to create a stream. For example, okay. For example, I have something called as let's take string array. Some names is equal to ram. Okay, John, something. For example, I have an array here. These are all some of the names. Okay. I want to close the curly braces. Now this is called what? An array. Now I want to create a stream to process the array elements. Then stream, let's say now the stream type, the type of the elements is string. So string, because array is a string array. Element type is string. The type parameter is string, stream of string. Stream is equal to arrays is a class. Arrays class contains a method called stream of names. This is how you can able to create one stream for an array. Even array is also one type of collection. So we can able to process elements of array also. So for that, what I'm writing, arrays dot stream of names. Okay. Arrays is a class. Arrays is a class. I think, at the time of working with arrays programming, you might have learned about how to sort the elements of an array directly by calling sort method. Arrays dot sort. Right? Good. So arrays is a class. It has a stream method. Pass the array name, names. This is a way of creating a stream for an array. So we can create a stream from collection We can create a stream from an array. We can also create a stream for raw values. From raw values. The meaning of from raw values, stream of, let's say integer. Stream is equal to stream dot of method is there, OF. And we can pass values. For example, 10, 23, 19, close, semicolon. This is called what? From raw values. It's a stream created or constructed through these values. Here the stream is constructed through this array. Here the stream is constructed through collection. Similarly, fourth option, empty. Empty stream. You can also get empty stream by calling stream.empty. For example, stream of t, type can be any type. Stream is equal to stream.empty. These are the most commonly used ways of creating stream. Mostly we call stream on collection or stream on array by calling arrays.stream. Okay, the last two just to know. But these are the enough ways to know about how to create a stream. From collection, from an array, from raw values, and from empty stream. Okay, different ways of creating stream is like this. Okay, right. Now coming to stream operations. Operations we'll discuss one after the other. First, I want to show one stream operation today. I want to show, okay, one stream operation today. Okay, right. Because we have our code with us in our Lambda test. Again, in stream, there are two types of operations are there. One is called intermediate operations and second one is terminal operations. A stream has two types of operations. One is intermediate operations and second one is called terminal operations. I'll tell you what does it mean. This code already I've copied and I've given to you. That's why I can able to make some changes to my code now. No issue with that because I already gave you. Okay, right. Right. Observe here. This code already yesterday I have copied to you.
Sir,
Tell me.
stream is a class or not?
Interface, first statement.
Oh, sorry, sir.
I know. That's why I written very first statement. This doubt will come, I know. That's why I written very first statement as stream is an interface. Collection is also an interface. Okay, right. Good. Come to the point. Let me talk about my code. Everybody, assume that these are all I'm removing now. Okay. Now my requirement is, what's the requirement? Display employees with a salary less than, not less than or equal to, less than 7,000. Okay, tell me what you generally write the code. How do you write this code? Display employees with salary less than 7,000. I'm calling without stream API. Without stream API. Tell me how do you do that?
For loop in that
First create
you
a
can
for each
for-
loop, sir. For each loop.
For employee
Employee.
for each loop.
Yes, sir. Column. Employee.
EMP list.
Employee list.
If
Only basket. Then if
salary
salary
get
dot
salary less than
less than 7,000.
7,000, then you want to display.
Display, sir. south. South.
Ah,
So yes, sir.
am I clear now?
Yes, sir.
Now using Stream API, with the Stream API, I'm writing the same. With the Stream API, I'm writing the same. Okay. EMP list dot stream dot filter arrow token. Filter accepts a predicate object. Do you know yesterday I gave one table containing some new function interfaces from Java 8? Predicate, consumer, supplier, function.
Yes.
Yes,
Filter is a stream operation which accepts predicate object. So E arrow token, E dot get salary less than 7,000.
For
Okay, I
each.
can write in the same line, but for information, I'm writing dot for each. For each accepts consumer object. System dot out dot, sorry, not dot, colon println. This colon is called as method reference operator. I'll talk about this reference operator first tomorrow. After that, I will start working with the stream operations. But observe here, what this stream method creates a stream object. Then I'm calling filter. This is one operation, stream operation, is to filter the elements of the stream. And this for each is another operation. This is to display the each element of the string. So if you want me to write, I can write line by line so that you can understand very clearly. But I have written in to show you that streams will reduce the code. Actually, this for each I should write in the same line. Just for making it readable, I am writing in 2 lines. Actually, this is one line only. That's it. Both will do the same thing. I'll give a separator. Now see, if I run this code, the 2 outputs are same, before and after. This output, both are same. This output is without Stream API. This output is with the Stream API. Right? The first output is what? Without Stream API. The second one is what? With the Stream API. Okay. So currently, I am not going to, explain, or I'm not going to talk about more operations. Like this, we have filter, count, distinct, map, flat map, reduce, max, min. Like that, these are all called as stream operations. Actually, filter is called intermediate operation. For each is called a terminal operation. Intermediate operation means it will create one more stream. It will transform this stream into another stream. That's called intermediate operation. This for each is not transforming the stream into another stream. It is directly performing the end operation. It is called terminal operation. So there are 2 types of operations in streams. I will write that point, but tomorrow I'll explain all these things. And we are finding a new operator called as colon, which means tomorrow's session is the most important session of this entire Java 8 features workshop. Tomorrow's class is the too much important class of this entire Java 8 workshop. Java 8 features. Tomorrow's session is the most important feature, most important class. Okay, just I want to tell you one point and I want to conclude the class for today. Okay, tomorrow's class is the most important one. Tomorrow at same, actually today I started at 7:20 or something, but I'll try to start the tomorrow session at 7 o'clock only, probably mostly. 99% by 7:75.
Sir, we have that other Ashok class, Ashok sir class is going on, sir, same time.
Morning 7?
Yeah, JRTP, sir.
Okay. So there is only one is pending now, one class. that clash generally occur because if it is a weekend, generally clash doesn't occur, but in weekdays, generally clash occurs. Try to manage at least for one day. Tomorrow's day, only one day.
Right, sir.
Yeah. So there are two types of stream operations. So what I'm saying is stream operations are two types. I'm not talking number of operations. Multiple number of operations are there. Operations are two types. One is intermediate operations.
Intermediate operation.
One is intermediate. Second one is terminal operations. Okay, one is intermediate operations. Second one is terminal operations. What is it? Intermediate operations will transform one stream to another stream. Terminal operation doesn't create a stream. It will perform the end operation on the stream. That's called terminal operation. For example, I want to count how many number of elements are there in a stream. Count means I'll get an answer. 20 or 35 or 99 or 1 million, like that. That is end terminal operation. Okay. Two types of operations are there. One is intermediate operations. The second one is the terminal operations. Okay. Okay. For today, we'll stop here. Better because we won't discuss Haribari. It's a very important one. If I start explaining now, it is going to become Haribari even for you and for me as well. So we will discuss very slowly because this is a very important operation. We'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow at the end of the session, I'll provide all this document for you. Okay, tomorrow I'll share this document also by performing the stream operations. Okay, right. Good. Tomorrow we'll discuss all the stream operations, and based on the time, about the date time, I'll just touch about what is local date, what is local time, what is local date time, and I'll give some idea. You can go ahead with that. You can go ahead with that by the idea what I'm just going to give you. Okay. Right. But tomorrow's session is very important, guys. At 7 o'clock we'll start. Exactly 7, or you can join by 7:10. We'll take 10 minutes as a grace period. At least by 7:10, we'll start the class. Okay. That's for today, guys. Tomorrow I will continue. Tomorrow,
Sir,
how much
how-
is possible, whatever is possible, I'll complete up to that.